Hey guys, this is Dave with AudioIn, and this is the Queen of Audio Aviation. It has a 4-driver hybrid configuration. It's beautiful. It has a great cable, lots of accessories. It does cost a couple of $100, but you know what? It's good. So this is a first for me. I've never reviewed or even listened to any of QOA's IEMs before, so I had no idea what to expect with these. I do know that QOA has been around since about 2019, so they are a relatively young company, and I'm not exactly sure what the relation to Kinnear is, but I do know that they are affiliated. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at what's included in the box. We have the IEMs, of course. This cable is modular, so it comes with both a 3.5 and 4.4 millimeter balanced interchangeable termination. It also includes a nice case and a pretty decent assortment of tips that also comes in its own case. As for the price, specifications, and design, the Aviation comes in at $199, and it has a hybrid driver configuration consisting of 3 Knowles balanced armature drivers and a single dynamic driver. The drivers are housed in a 3D printed resin shell, which has a couple of different design options. The other design is really nice as well. It has a slightly more simple blue and silver pattern on the faceplate. They're both nice, but this one has some really nice color combinations, and it has just a little more character in my opinion. Cable is also very nice. It doesn't have a lot of memory, so it's quite easy to manage. And as I had mentioned, it's modular, which is becoming more common at this price point, but it's definitely something I can appreciate. Now, as far as the fit and the comfort, it's excellent. These fit my ears perfectly, and with the included large tips, I absolutely had no issues with the discomfort. I had no problem achieving or maintaining a proper fit and seal. Okay, let's move on to the sound. So as I had mentioned, I had no idea what to expect when I first sat down for my initial listen, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised at how well these are tuned. It is a safe tuning, so there isn't really anything that stood out to me. However, I also didn't hear any major flaws, at least not for this price point. Not that it doesn't have any, but they are fairly minor, and overall I feel like this is a fairly versatile and easy to listen to IEM. And I would say the sound signature does land in the V-shaped category, but it's a mild V-shape, so while the mid-range is definitely a little recessed, it's still tastefully done, and vocals and instruments are still pretty front and center. It doesn't push them back too far, and even though there is a slight emphasis on the bass and treble, it's nothing too dramatic or drastic, and it still maintains a fairly well-balanced and natural signature overall. So some of the flaws you might see occasionally in a V-shaped signature don't really seem to be as big of an issue with the Aviation. But if we break things down a little further, starting with the bass, again, the bass quantities are a little elevated over the mids, which does give it a little more of a fun presentation, but it seems like they've taken a slightly more mature or reserved approach. So as V-shaped tunings go, it does still give the listener an overall engaging and fun experience, but it also maintains really good control. And while I wouldn't say the bass is super accurate, I would say it still sounds very good, and it still gives you nice amounts of dynamics and mid-bass texture as well. As for the bass tuning, it is a little more mid-bass focused, so there is just a little bit of warmth in the bass presentation, but the dynamic driver seems to be giving me pretty much everything else I would expect at this price. And then as you transition out of the mid-bass into the lower mids, this is where the balanced armature driver starts to take over, and even though there is just a small amount of detail loss in the lower mids, that transition does seem to be fairly well controlled. So it still gives you enough detail as to keep it from sounding too muddy or incoherent. Now, as for the mid-range tuning, it is just a little recessed, but vocals and instruments still maintain good presence. And while they're not necessarily as front and center as what you might get with a more neutral tuning, I think they do have enough energy to maintain the center focus and hold the listener's attention. As far as instrument timbre, it's good. Horns sound natural, pianos sound very natural. So instruments that fall into the mid-range for the most part sound just correct. But like I said, the Aviation is not perfect, and where it does kind of start to reveal its flaws are in the treble. And again, at this price point, these are nitpicks, and these issues definitely aren't deal breakers by any means. And this is something that I noticed when I saw the graph as well, and what I was hearing made a little more sense at that point. And what that is there is something happening between like 7 to 9K that is causing some female vocals and some cymbals and percussive instruments to sound a little blunted, and where I would usually expect to hear just a little more bite or edge, it seems to be lacking, and those frequencies are coming across as just a little too soft for me. And what that can do, for me at least, sometimes is it can just take a little of that excitement and engagement out of the equation. Then after 9K, things start to drop off a little too much, which unfortunately means it is going to lack just a little in the upper treble region, so it doesn't quite have as much air and sparkle as I would like to hear. Now, as far as its technical performance, I would say it's not the best I've heard at this price, but it is still good. It could use just a little more detail and micro detail, and while I wouldn't say the soundstage is narrow, I wouldn't call it wide either. It's right in the middle. It's about average for this price point. And I think these issues are probably related to the treble tuning. Now, instrument imaging is good though, and while things don't necessarily have a really open presentation, the dimension is still there, and the instruments sound nice and focused, as do the vocals, so the center imaging does sound nice and focused. And as you can see, I have some of my favorite IEMs in this price range on the table. I've got the A-Fold Performer 5, Tantrum Cara, C-Audio UMA 2, and the Dunu Falcon Ultra. Now, where I think the Aviation stands in regards to the competition, I would say where the Aviation shines within this price range is in its tuning. And again, while it does still have its flaws, I really do think it's well tuned, albeit a safe tuning. That being said, I do think it falls just short of all of these in terms of its technical performance. But there are a lot of IEMs I would say that it is better than. I would say it's probably better than the Winter Ultra, the Kumo, the Celeste Phoenix Call, the Yume Ultra. So it kind of falls right in the middle of the $200 price bracket in terms of its general performance, in my opinion. So that being said, I do feel like I can give it a recommendation based on its tuning, because again, it's very decently tuned, and I feel like most buyers would find this easy on the ears, not fatiguing, and while it may not necessarily have any quote-unquote special or standout attributes, generally it just sounds good, and I think QOA did a really good job just putting together a solid package with a well-designed, well-built IEM. So that concludes my review of the Queen of Audio Aviation. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would please like this video, please share this video. I hope you guys have an awesome day.